Okay, just a little background. I've always been born and bred in Singapore, and I've moved to India, in the northeast of India, about 2 years back. So what I'm about to say will be an observation of what I've seen just before I left, and what I have observed in these 6-month intervals that I've been coming back. So let's start with the influx of foreigners. I'm trying to not to sound impartial or partial actually towards the Indians. I mean, I think the influx of Indians came much earlier than the other demographics of foreigners. So essentially, I think for them, they have not really affected the mass public, the layman, but I think more or less their impact was more to me in the corporate world. I have friends who actually, work in the corporate world, and they have told me, the culture of the Indian nationals have been a little bit hard to bear, as well as it takes a lot of adjusting as to how, especially in the manner of speaking. Only because if you trace back to how Indians speak in India, they are as brash and they do sound obnoxious even in their own language. So I think they've brought that culture here, but I think they have not affected like the whole marketplace as much as the next demographic I'm about to say. So it will be the Chinese nationals. Like this time around when I came back, I've noticed they have really, maybe infiltrate is a very bad word, but they've really permeated every level of Singapore, the Singapore employment. And maybe it's just me or the platforms that I've been visiting, but I do notice they have brought a lot of their cultures to Singapore, and not in a very positive way. I've seen in some of the videos been put, and I wonder, I think it's got a very negative influence on our children and what they would see. I mean, as it is, I think Singaporeans took a very long time to reach the level that we are, being a lot more enculturated with social graces. We've come a very long way, with all the courtesy campaigns since I was young. But with the influx of the Chinese nationals, they've kind of like negated all that. Like they're showing. I mean, just to put it in a very simple manner, they're very much at home in Singapore. To be honest, if you're just talking about statistics and numbers, it doesn't sound very ideal. I mean, Singapore is very, very small. As it is, when we were at 3.5 million, it was already, it already felt very congested, like you said just now, I think these moves are essential for a growth in GDP, but I mean, with our space constraints, I don't know if that's possible. I've not been following much of Singapore politics, but if I'm thinking in a very layman's way, it doesn't sound like it's a very good idea.
SDA says it opposes the government's population white paper published in 2013, which projected a population size of 6.9 million. The SDA says it advocates a Singaporeans first policy for jobs. It also supports a minimum wage scheme, which the party says will help citizens cope with high costs of living.
The Singapore Democratic Alliance presents this manifesto to the people as part of our plan for Singapore towards building a Singapore for Singaporeans. The issues that we wish to tackle in the manifesto are as follows. Number 1, the population white paper. Number 2, the CPF and retirement. Number 3, Housing Development Board. Number 4, the cost of healthcare. Number 5, the public transport system. 6, employment. And number 7, education. Ladies and gentlemen, please support Singapore for Singaporeans, Singaporeans First Policy, Singapore Democratic Alliance. Thank you.